The global economic environment in 2020 was very challenging as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had its contagion effects on major economies throughout the world. Despite the challenges, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, through the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, is committed to ensuring that Malaysia remains an investor-friendly destination for the long-term growth of both foreign and domestic firms. In 2020, Malaysia approved 164 billion in investment across 4,599 projects in the manufacturing, services and primary sectors. The manufacturing sector has the greatest leading effect on the nation's operations and growth. It will continue to be the economic pillar. This comprises, among other things, forward and reverse linkages, the development of cluster industries, the transfer of new technology, and the enhancement of skills. The manufacturing industry in Malaysia approved 91.3 billion in investment for 2020, a 10.3% rise over 2019. Additionally, the number of approved manufacturing projects climbed by 6.2% from 988 in 2019 to 1,049 in 2020. The implementation of these approved manufacturing projects will result in the creation of almost 80,000 new employment. This includes engineers, plant maintenance supervisors, tools and die makers, machinists, IT staff, quality controllers, electricians, and welders.
Adventure Travel Trade Association mentioned that the companies and organizations throughout the tourism industry are struggling and are not immune to this crisis. Ironically, the mere thing that the industry is dependent on to generate revenue is unachievable in the face of social restriction, making finance matters exacerbate with each passing days as movement and travel ban are imposed. Revenues have declined significantly and expenditure is still ongoing. Cash flow is now a problem throughout the industry. A press statement made on March 24, 2020 by the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research foresees that Malaysia's real GDP growth will decline from 4.0% by 2020 to 2.9%, with job losses of up to 2.4 million, 67% of which will come from the untrained category of workers. Preliminary estimates from the International Labour Organization suggest that unemployment and underemployment are increasing dramatically as the crisis progresses. Figure 3. Economic growth in Malaysia. Source: EY 2020. The unemployment rate in 2020 is up to 3.4%, compared with a 3.5% increase when the pandemic gets worse, according to updated baseline forecast as shown in Figure 4. According to Tourism Malaysia DG Datuk Musa Yusof, one of the goals is to increase domestic journey to help offset COVID-19's effect on the international demand for tourists, as the domestic market had proved the potential value of tourism activities, as RM62 billion was generated from the domestic market in 2018.
The pandemic-induced economic downturn is causing problems in the most private sector, which is causing companies to act harshly by terminating employees' employment, lowering hours to cut labour costs and giving workers unpaid leave. As a result, this condition has become problematic or difficult for finding employment in Malaysia. As of November 4, 2020, many firms still allow or mandate working from home, and there are still certain mobility restrictions and physical separation requirements in place, with more restrictions in areas with a lot of cases. While some less affected states are undertaking CMCO, other states are presently undergoing RMCO. The economy of Malaysia has been badly hit by months of movement restrictions and businesses closures, leading to a 17.1% decline in GDP year-over-year in the second quarter of 2020. Due to the decline in the related activities and the disruption of global supply chains, the economy, which had started even before mobility restrictions were put in place, caused a substantial rise in unemployment. The figure 2 below shows that the unemployment rate increased from 3.3% in January 2020 to 5.3% in May 2020, before decreasing to 4.7% in August 2020. Figure 3 then shows that the number of people outside the labour force, which captures those who are jobless but not available to begin work or actively looking for a job due to difficulty of job searching during the COVID-19 environment. Moreover, unofficial government statistics based on a survey covering the period March 23rd to 31st, 2020 revealed that a large number of people had lost their jobs and some had been affected having their working hours reduced or by having been put on leave with no or less pay. Similarly, from the employment insurance system shows that job losses increased by 42% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2020, and is expected to continue increasing between 50% and 200% year-on-year for each subsequent quarter in 2020. Since a major portion of the workforce in the agricultural industry comes from the bottom B40% of the income distribution B40, the rate of job displacement has been especially high in this industry. The impact has been particularly severe on informal workers or those without employment-related social insurance. According to the World Bank, Malaysia's total employment is predicted to be 39.2% informal employment, which includes the majority of self-employed individuals, but it was sidestepped by a large part of the early income support measures during the crisis. Since the majority of this income support first came from the former social insurance programs, informal workers were among the most vulnerable demographics in terms of the economy throughout this crisis.
Malaysian GDP figures are out tomorrow, giving a sense of how the pandemic has affected growth. Now, a year on, many are still feeling the sting. And Malaysia is back under lockdown again, and those in the informal sectors are struggling.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Atika binti Zulkifli. My metric number is 295539, and today I'm going to explain about COVID-19 impact on gross domestic product in Malaysia.
We need to extend this partial lockdown for another 2 weeks.
The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the whole world, and Malaysia has no exception in experiencing the impact of this epidemic, where in 2020, a total of 113,010 positive cases were recorded with 471 cases of death. The health crisis has also affected the trajectory of the country's economic growth. The various phases of the Movement Control Order (MCO) from 18 March 2020, which came into the force to curb the spread of the COVID-19 outbreak, resulted to the temporary closure of the several economic sectors and a reduction in operating hours. In 2020, Malaysia's economy contracted by 5.6% as compared to 4.4% in the previous year. In general, all sectors recorded negative growth, of which the services sector declared 5.5%, manufacturing contracted 2.6%, and agriculture declined 2.2%. However, two other sectors, namely construction and mining and quarrying, recorded two-digit decline at a negative 19.4% and 10.6% respectively. The country's economic growth was contributed by the economic's performance at the state level. Variations in product concentrations between states have varying impact on the overall performance of gross domestic product (GDP) by state, especially in facing COVID-19 outbreak crisis. National GDP experienced a reduction of 18.4 billion as compared to 2019. Bank Negara Malaysia Governor Datuk Nur Syamsiah Muhammad Yunus said that the gross domestic product (GDP) growth, particularly in the first quarter of this year, will be affected by the COVID-19. The overall impact of the virus on the Malaysian economy will depend on the duration and spread of the outbreak as well as policy responses by authorities, said Nur Syamsiah.
Since the introduction of the Movement Control Order (MCO) on 18 March, airline companies nationwide have been forced to halt their operation and ground large parts of their fleets. According to Transport Minister Datuk Seri Wah Ka Siong, Malaysia's aviation industry is projected to lose RM13 billion this year as air travel continues to face travel restrictions. This includes RM10.9 billion loss from Malaysia-based airlines such as Malaysia Airlines Berhad, AirAsia Group Berhad, and Malindo Airways Sdn Berhad, and another RM2.1 billion from airport operators including Malaysia Airports Holding Berhad and AHB and Senai Airport Terminal Services Sdn Berhad. In the July parliamentary session, Datuk Seri Wee Ka Siong highlighted that cancelled flights from the three local carriers affected 4.360 million passengers, while another 1.211 million passengers postponed their flight. Additionally, some passengers were also given refunds worth RM399 million. Malaysia Airlines, which from the beginning of the MCO has scaled down its operation, introduced salary cuts and offered unpaid leaves to over 13,000 of its employees, and undertake an immediate restructuring process to ensure its survival.
Meanwhile, its affiliate, AirAsia X Berhad, recently announced that it has run out of money and needs to raise up to 500 million to restart the airline. Both companies have also confirmed the retrenchment of 10% of their 24,000 employees.